Tonight on Midnight Stinks, I am still getting to know Heresy from Chapel Factory, but I can tell you right now it has fast become one of my holy grail scents. It is the sharp green metallic floral of violet leaf, mingled with cool aromatic cedar, lofty sandalwood, and the smoked leather notes of vetiver, elements which alchemize into the austere elegance and kindred glooms of a dry, peppery violet incense. If you like the dark ambience and nocturnal aesthetic of dungeon synth, coupled with spectral visionary Simon Marsden's black and white photographs of haunted ruins and moonlit abbeys, this is a transportive scent that will spirit you away to those eerie, ominous realms. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Comme des Garçons Incense Series Avignon. This is a dusty, antique rosewood chest locked against prying eyes until the moment it wants to be open, full of bitter frankincense-soaked veils, coniferous cedar shavings, and brittle scrolls scrawled with secrets unspeakable and sublime. This is my ultimate go-to comfort scent in any season, and the fragrance I reach for whenever I need inspiration of an ineffable nature. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Ambre Narguile from the Hermessence line gets a lot of apple pie references from reviewers, but I don't get that myself. A spiced compote, perhaps. Dried fruits, raisins and prunes, stewed in honey and rum and cinnamon, and left on the stove very nearly too long. They've been cooked down to a syrupy essence of their former selves, and if you hadn't pulled them from the flame, the caramelized sugars might have started to smoke and burn. I don't love sweet fragrances, but come October, I crave this one. It calls to mind reading by firelight a book you've experienced a million times, like The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I actually only just read, but I loved it so much I'm ready to go at it again. You're wearing a cozy, oversized cardigan with thick cables and toggle buttons, and you probably inherited it from your grandpa. Not to be confused with that awful cardigan in Taylor Swift's video. Ugh, don't get me started on that. That's another stink for another time. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Holy Terror from Arcana Wildcraft is one of my top 10 forever scents. A blend both gloomy and cozy, with drafty corners of frankincense, deep whispering myrrh, and guttering beeswax candles. It smells, too, of rarefied resins, holy woods, and perhaps less of the fearsome spirits known to haunt moonlit graves than it is of curling up under a frayed and ragged antique patchwork quilt and reading about these dreadful phantoms in the pages of a centuries-old horrid novel, in the safety of a circle of warm, glowing lamplight. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, my initial impressions of Fleur Cache by Anatole Le Breton are of celery and shadows and green seeds and spice pods crushed on cool marble, desiccated bouquets more dust than bloom, and the skeletal crumbling remains of frosted confections covered in cobwebs. This is a vanilla scent. You can smell it, but it's a vanilla that's not going to be defined by the ice creamy cakiness that we typically associate with this note. It's almost like it's dressing itself up to be unpleasant, like trying to convince us that Gillian Anderson is the creepy and clock-stoppingly tragic figure of Miss Havisham. But you can't fool me, and I am not having it. This is gorgeous. As it wears, a woodsy oaky note emerges, not quite boozy, but the casks where something smooth and delicious was aged. Overall, this is a deeply melancholic and complex vanilla, strange and dry, and utterly unlike all of the vanillas you may have known up until this moment. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Geisha Noir from Aromam is a scent I first encountered via Makeup Alley in 2004 when I was beginning my fragrance journey and spent a lot of time on the site's forums. It was a thrilling experience swapping scent samples with strangers, but the kind of strangers with whom you were slowly making kindred connections and forming, in some instances, marvelous friendships that would last many years. I have hoarded my tiny vial ever since that time and finally bought a full bottle last week. Geisha Noir is an intense golden amber and smoky, somber tonka that's rich and hypnotic, but before it veers too far into gourmand territory, you encounter an unexpected edge of leather and salt that keeps things interesting and not so easily categorized. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Mandragore by Annie Goutal. Mandragore reminds me of an amusing and relatable scene in the 1980s vampire film The Lost Boys, when the main character's eccentric grandpa tootles down the driveway in his antique jalopy and immediately comes back, only to say, "Well, that's about as close to town as I like to get." My perfume shelf is filled mostly with resinous autumnal fragrances or the scents of deep wintry woods, and Mandragore, with its bright, effervescent, lemony, peppery opening that quickly fades to the gentle herbal fizzes of a bergamot shandy, is probably as close to a summer scent as I like to get. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Philosykos from Diptique is a scent I don't wear very often because I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I've also heard it pronounced Philosykos and Philosykos, and to be honest, I'm not sure which is correct. It is meant to be a perfumed ode to the fig tree in its entirety, the wood, the leaves, and the fruit. But to be transparent here, I've never eaten a fresh fig, and even worse, I sometimes get confused about dried figs and dried dates, so I'm already at a loss. What I do experience from this scent is the milky sap from broken twigs and the fragrance of spring greenery damp from a morning rain. Despite that, it still comes off as dry, and I would expect it to also be fresh and light, but somehow it's strangely musty. I wear this on days when I know I've got a lot to think about to remind myself that it's okay to not know everything and maybe never reach a conclusion. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Saffron Troublon by Tezon is a wonderfully restorative, heart-warming, and heart-opening scent. There's a comforting sweetness to it, though not at all sugary or syrupy or cloying. It's a bedtime ritual, beginning with custardy spoonfuls of sandalwood pudding and vanilla bean cream, a lukewarm bath infused with a concoction of milky musks and delicate pink rosewater, and a marvelously grounding, magically enveloping hug. You'll sleep the soundest and deepest of sleeps, and you will be visited by the loveliest of midsummer dreams. Tonight on Midnight Stinks, Etat Libre d'Orange's Spice Must Flow is less a Frank Herbert's space spice and more a hybrid of late 90s English pop group members Posh Spice and Ginger Spice. It's a lone, lush rose, cool and fragrant and mysteriously blooming in the dry, hot sands where only the prickliest, most pungent and peppery spices survive. I don't think there's any citrus listed in the notes, but there's a mild, sour zing when you first spritz that gives the impression of radiance, and a beautiful cardamom incense note at the dry down that lends a shadowy balance. I would actually call this a rose for people who think they don't like roses, rather than an entry point to the Dune universe for fans of Spice World. Wait, what were we talking about?